I want to talk about Those Singing Monsters, an upcoming cartoon series based around My Singing Monsters itself, for those of you who don't know. Now, we actually have some news regarding the show, and I'd just like to discuss the show overall. Now, as for the actual news that we have regarding the show, Catherine Winder, leader behind the company making the series, Winston Sky Entertainment, announced here in a live stream that we will be getting more news for the show. I know the news is that we're getting more news for the show by the end of this year. It's not clear what exactly this news will be. Of course, we're going to speculate about it now, but here is the clip where Catherine goes into new news actually being released later in the year.
Over the past few years, we've been busy adapting this musical property into a toy line with our friends at Play Monster and a show, which we're going to share a little bit more about later in the year.
As for what the news in general itself will be regarding the show, we're not actually exactly sure what the news will be. Only the people making it know, but we can speculate regarding about what the news will be. I think personally it is going to involve not necessarily about the release of the show. They previously announced for the show a previous release date of 2019, and we know now that they definitely didn't meet that release date. So going from that, I'm not sure when exactly they are going to be planning to release it now. We know that the old art style was being planned back then, however, so potentially the show was being broadcast for that release date in the old art style before they made the leap to actually go ahead and develop the show further and come up with the 3D art style that we can see in the promo image here now. I think the news will be a broader understanding of what the show is and what exactly we can expect from the show. We know very little regarding the plot of the show. We will get into detail what we know about the plot in a bit, but we know very little. So I think going from that, we need more detail. We've not seen the show at all either, except from this promo image. So I do think that we need to see more of the show, what exactly it's about, the different locations we can find within the show. Is it all going to be set inside of the forest theme that is going on? I personally don't think that they will do that. I think they're going to really tie up the lore in a nice neat bow here, and they're going to try and make some new locations potentially. We saw in the concept art a house-like structure within the Singing Monsters universe. Now we know that that isn't canon to the actual show itself because that was concept art for the actual show, but going from the concept art, it does look like they are going to be planning on making the world very musical and taking musical inspiration for the show, and I really like that idea. I can't wait to see what they do with the locations, making it very musical-esque. I really think they should draw into that a lot with the different locations that they make, and I'm excited to see the different locations in general that they make. I really hope that we see all the monsters within the show. It may not get a season 2, and if it's far in development, I don't think we'll see the magicals, but I do think seeing every specific monster will be cool. I think each specific type of monster and each class should exist in a different environment and a different location. Like the natural monsters, I think, should be present within their little houses and like the structures that you're going to find inside of the forest, and the town itself that will exist inside of the forest. I do want to see more locations, perhaps a little electricity-like area which the monsters have to journey to potentially to get something or something like that. Adding to the lore of the world itself is really important with this show, and I really want to see them do something like that with the show itself. Now, the show is being distributed by Skybound, who are working alongside Winston Sky Entertainment and Space Age Studios from the UK, where I am, hello, to actually develop on the show. So very exciting stuff there. Winston Sky Entertainment, if we have a look here, inside of the Super Dinosaur animated series, have done a pretty good job before, and it looks absolutely phenomenal. Their 3D style that they're going for, I really hope Those Singing Monsters is as good as this animation, or in fact even better. I'm really hoping that the animation looks really fluid, really cool, and not static in any sort of way. I want the characters to be expressive, especially with My Singing Monsters itself as a franchise. The monsters are very expressive themselves within their animations and things, and I think making them expressive and around the 3D art style that they've gone to will definitely allow them more room to be expressive. Not that 2D animation, of course, can't actually express facial expressions and emotion. I think that it can do it, in fact, more successfully than 3D animation, in all honesty, but I think specifically for My Singing Monsters, a 3D art style was definitely the right choice for them to make, especially with Winston Sky Entertainment clearly having skills within the 3D sector itself, with Catherine Winder being involved in projects such as Angry Birds, and of course we know the Angry Birds movies are beloved by many and an absolute success and phenomenon, so I'm really excited to see what exactly the studio can come up with. But regarding the actual plots, I hope that the plot overall is overarching and that it's continuous, and we are actually going to delve deeper into this throughout the video, but I do want the plot itself to be a continuous story that continues throughout episodes, and I want the characters themselves to be defined not necessarily by the My Singing Monsters lore that we know now, but I want them to define the characters themselves, and I want them to come up with their own sort of canon for the show. The show itself has been described for the plot itself not to be canon to the actual games. That means that in order for the show to actually be successful, they need to come up with and devise their own ideas so that the show can be successful, like we want to see character development naturally, don't we? I'm really worried about the show itself and how the humor's going to play out. When you consider a franchise such as My Singing Monsters, it's key to understand the audience at hand here. We don't just have kids within the My Singing Monsters fandom, we also have adults, teenagers, all ages. And if you look at shows which are setting the path and the framework now for what animation is and what is a trend now, it's a trend for shows to have continuity, because that creates fandoms themselves, it creates speculation, theories regarding the show itself, and it creates open discussions around the plot and things. If episodes are all self-contained, that's not going to lead the show to be as successful, I do believe, as what it could be. I think the show should take a path where it's self-contained in a way, but it's not necessarily. I think episodes should go off of one another. I think if a character develops in a certain episode, that development should of course continue onwards, and they should bear that in mind completely when making the series. If they don't add an element of continuity, it's not going to leave room for discussions to actually happen. People aren't going to be coming back to the show all crazy waiting for the next episode. Like I've said, I'm not saying that it shouldn't be self-contained with this sort of thing. You definitely don't want it to be necessarily a continuous show necessarily, but I think they need to play it really cleverly so that they scatter elements of plot and things that actually do matter and reveal characters which are going to be inside this diverse world, and they need to really build it from the ground up, because My Singing Monsters itself doesn't have the framework for this type of project, and I'm really worried about this sort of thing, because if they tie the game too closely to those Singing Monsters itself, it's going to create issues for the show, because the show needs to create its own world. It's separate to My Singing Monsters. We know it's not canon to the original games, so they really need to go off of that fact and create their own world up which fans can get invested in. If it's not a show that is investable by fans, then that just means that people aren't going to come back. People aren't going to care. They need to build up the show and create this world which can be explored, and sure, they are going to do some fan service and reveal monsters from different classes like the Wobblins, I do think, and Celestials and that type of thing, but they need to really consider the lore in this, because it's not related to My Singing Monsters itself. They may be inspired by aspects such as the Wobblins being devised by Wobox or something like that. They may be intrigued into that aspects, but that itself should be a plot point that is expanded upon by the studio itself. All things need to be expanded upon because the game just simply doesn't have enough content for the actual show to thrive upon. The show needs to take the game and use that as an asset rather than something which can be used as an epitome for the show itself. It needs to be its own separate thing. It can't take literally everything from the game and just expect for that to be okay. And I'm really worried about the jokes and things inside of the show too. I know there's lots of worries around the show, but I really want this show to turn out successful, so I hope you guys understand. I really want to see character development, an overarching story. It's all so important, and as I've mentioned, the gags in it must be suited for a wide range of audiences. Sure, they can have some gags in it and some comedic moments which tie into little kids, like little thoughts or whatever, I don't know, but that sort of stuff is a little cringy, and they need to consider the balance between adult humor and also childlike humor. So things that adults can also participate in and find enjoyable are present inside of the show. They need to consider that while making the show, and I'm sure that they're considering all these aspects whilst making the show. I have no doubt about that. But I think it's interesting to speculate about the show itself and how exactly it will fit into the My Singing Monsters franchise. Because if it doesn't fit in successfully, then the show's not going to be a success, and therefore it's not going to be an opportunity for the game to grow, which is obviously what they are intending to do, Big Blue Button doable with this animated series. It's going to expand upon the universe itself, whilst it's not going to be canon to the original games, and they really need to expand on the plot in this, and I want there to be an overarching story. As for the actual plot, however, what we actually know about the plot so far is that Those Singing Monsters follows a misfit Mastro and her motley friends to hear the musical potential in all. And that is literally all the information that we have regarding the plot so far. Now, notice here that it ties into the pronoun her. Now, as we know, we have inside of the promotional art for Con Mama and Pom Pom. Seeing as though it's describing the pronoun as feminine, I do think that Pom Pom is rather feminine. And whilst this isn't canon to the My Singing Monsters lore that we know now, so I do think that they may actually come up with genders inside of this Those Singing Monsters universe. So that is going to be interesting. Perhaps some monsters may be called they, them. That may be an opportunity, of course, but going from the pronoun here described, it would appear as though Pom Pom, going from her perhaps feminine art style, will be the main character. Going from the actual description of the show revolving around her, it's assumable, with her being literally the main character inside the promo art as well, with them being in the middle, that Pom Pom will be the main character inside of the series. It ties closely to the idea of Pom Pom having these friends that she goes on these types of adventures on to hear the musical potential in all. And going from that, I would say the main cast is going to be consisted of Pom Pom's friends, and I would like to see them add more main characters in the future. I don't think it should necessarily just be characters that are just beloved by fans. I want to see Kana have a standing presence in the show. I feel like Kana is a very main featured character inside of the My Singing Monsters franchise. Kana is literally the monster that has provided us with pretty much every single lore point throughout the series, so I do think it's important for Kana to actually be involved with the show potentially. If they are choosing specific monsters, I would just like to say Kana is probably a good choice because Kana is beloved by many as well, and they're featured on many islands. Many islands. Now, it says that Pom Pom is a misfit as well. So going from that, it would appear as though the story is going to revolve around Pom Pom not fitting in with the other monsters, and we're going to see Pom Pom develop throughout the series. Now, we know that this description was actually before the new phase of Those Singing Monsters development, where the art style was still like this, but I do think the show has kept certain elements because Pom Pom was featured all the way back when inside of the logo and everything, and literally loads of artwork and stuff was centralized around Pom Pom, and I think like it was pretty obvious that Pom Pom was going to take a standing figure inside of the show, going from the promo art available. They really need to set up the lore for this series. I want to become invested in it, like I've mentioned, so it's really important for them to actually delve into the lore itself. I want them to build the show up, like I said, and also consider just making lore for the show that can be explored, mysteries to explore throughout the series. Going from the Super Dinosaur series from Winston Sky Entertainment, the overall lore being established within every episode. I've only watched a very short clip, so this may be an understatement for the show, but I do think that it was very self-contained. So going from that, I hope that they escape from this and they actually do something brand new with continuity being present so that the show can truly thrive, because that's a new industry standard, I would say, in animation right now. That's how people like shows. You don't necessarily see shows that don't have lots of continuity anymore. Pretty much every show now has continuity in some aspects, where characters develop, new things are introduced into the lore, things are explored within the lore within the series. They really need to get into the lore. That's my main worry. I'm really hoping they build it from the ground up, they don't base it too much off the game. And now actually, Winston Sky Entertainment, the leading company behind the development and overseer of the series overall, has actually posted a post regarding Boskus. They've called it Meet a Character Monday, and they posted it on Instagram, and it says, "Meet Boskus from My Singing Monsters." Obviously it's not necessarily associated to the show itself, but bearing in mind these are the creators of those singing monsters, you must bear that in mind. It says, if you value your dignity, never challenge a Boscus to a Fumor, and it basically just goes on about how Boscus's finger on its nose has developed through time to withstand high amounts of weight. And that does worry me slightly. Now, I know this is targeting the original game, so it's not necessarily for those singing monsters, but bear in mind these are the creators behind the show that we are going to be seeing. It causes a little worry for me, because if these guys are saying this about Boscus, and we know that Boscus is probably going to be a main character, going from the concept art that was released, that may have changed, I don't know. It's assumable that Boscus will be present in some regard. And going from this, the character doesn't appear to be defined whatsoever, and I really want to see them define the characters individually. I don't want all the monsters to just mishmash together. I want them all to be unique in this world which they create up, and I want them all to have their own backstories that we can explore and things inside of episodes. And I'm not saying that's going to be the main feature of the show. It'll probably just be a self-contained mainly show, but of course I do want to figure out characters' backstory, the actual lore behind it, and I'm just a little worried going from this post that they're leaning too heavily into the actual game's lore and not actually building the lore up for the actual Those Singing Monsters franchise itself, because it is going to be a separate thing to My Singing Monsters. Sure, it's going to be involved with the My Singing Monsters franchise directly, but it's going to be a separate entity. It's not the same thing. It just appears to me, going from that, obviously it's not from Those Singing Monsters and whatnot, but just going from that, it just creates a bit of worry. I'm not going to lean too heavily into it. I'm just going to say what I've said, but it just seems a bit worrying. As for the actual design behind the show, I think it looks a lot better now they've took on the 3D art style. It's going to leave room for a lot more expressive animations and the monsters being able to be a lot more expressive themselves, I do believe. I considered the old art style to be a little confusing personally. It looked really static, and I was really unsure how they were going to go about animating it. It didn't really look like the monsters could move up and down necessarily. It looked really static. I just really can't think of another word to describe it. It was something, that's for sure. I'm really happy they chose to actually upgrade the art style significantly, though. I'm so glad that they did, and I'm excited to figure out what the other monsters look like in this universe, whether there are going to be new characters specifically to Those Singing Monsters. I think that would be an interesting aspect to explore. They could really get into the lore in here, and whilst this isn't going to be the lore that's going to be in the actual games themselves, I do hope there's some kind of like enemy figure inside of the series or something, because that'll set up a load of plot points there that could be used to actually devise the world itself up, and I really would like them to actually draw into the lore here. As for the actual locations present within the universe itself, we see the forest, and inside of the Instagram post we get even more of a look of different locations inside of the forest that is going to be inside of this world, inside of the actual show. And we also see a little town as well inside of the concept art that will likely be making it into the grand product, as the forest was also featured inside the concept art and it appears to have been reused inside the new animation style. We don't actually know if overall world itself has been reset with the new animation style. We know that going from the description and Pom-Pom being featured in the middle, that it appears to still be similar, or in fact the same, so I'm intrigued into what exactly the process was behind the actual development of the show, and whether things were cancelled or brought back into the new style, and what exactly went off there. I think that will definitely be an interesting aspect for the animators and the people behind the show to discuss in the future. Another worry that I have for the show itself is regarding the voice actors for the show. Personally, I think that they shouldn't have, like, Monster Handler Matt come on over to the Those Singing Monsters studio and voice Mammoth. I think the show is a separate thing to the game, and that they should find individual voice actors for specific monsters. I'm a little confused how the show is going to tie up the musicality of the series itself. Will that just be left behind? I like the whole several locations at the moment using musical instruments, and the whole musicality of the locations that we've seen. We've only seen the town in the concept art, but if they do that for every single location, it's really going to make the world unique, and I really want to see them do that, so that's very exciting. I hope we see all kinds of monsters as I've been over, from the Wobblins, Celestials, and Naturals, and I hope they tied the lore up in a nice, neat bow that we can all just enjoy opening up and looking at what's inside this lovely universe that they've created. And I hope they just do it really well. And as for the voice actors, I would actually like to go to the Sonic the Hedgehog film. I think that it did it really well, actually, how it went about the voice actors for it. Rather than taking the video game voice actors, they actually got new voice actors. I'm not saying get celebrities, but I am saying that they should find individual voice actors that suit their world that they're creating, not the game's world, their world, because the show is different to the game and the game's lore and whatnot, and I just want to see it thrive, guys. I know I've expressed a lot of concerns regarding the series, but we don't know a lot about it, so I feel like it's probably good to get the concerns out of the way and what I want to expect from the show, so that it could potentially influence the show in a positive way if anyone wants to watch this. And I also think it's just interesting to talk about anyway. It's a brand new cartoon series, and we've never had anything like this inside of the My Singing Monsters franchise before, definitely, and we probably won't get anything like it again unless it gets to Series 2, Series 3 or whatnot. And I'm excited to see the universe that they create themselves, and I really hope they aren't taking the game's lore too seriously, because we know it's not canon to the actual game, so I just want to see them expand on the actual universe that they are making, not the game they're making, with the characters that they choose to select to put inside the universe. Hopefully a huge range of characters that we will see across the episodes. I'm excited to see how many episodes we will get, where exactly the episodes will go. And another important topic that I would like to bring up, I want the show to be present on streaming platforms. I think that's a big one for me. Netflix particularly, something like that. I don't know if they'd be able to get it on Netflix, but definitely Netflix. Everyone has Netflix. Lots of people would watch it. It'd influence a lot of people to go into My Singing Monsters, and it'd create a huge audience for the show potentially. I really hope that they release episodes on a weekly basis rather than through different periods of time in an unscheduled format. I really hope they do it weekly so people can get into the series, get invested in it and the lore that they are setting up in the character development, so people are excited for episodes. As we've seen in recent times with animation, it's just so important for shows to just actually use an episodic format where episodes are released weekly. I hope that they've really considered about the show, how they could make it successful, and I hope they release it weekly. I hope it's available in every country equally. I don't want the show to be exclusive to a specific country at a given point, because that just gives room for people to just not be able to purchase the show through legal means, and of course people want to support this show as much as possible, so I really do hope that they consider this and release it on Google Play, the App Store, whatnot, so people can buy it straight away when episodes come out. I really want to see that, and I hope that they put it on streaming platforms too. That's a big one. Now we know that Winsun, Sky Entertainment, and Skybound are actually handling the distribution throughout the entire world besides Canada, so I'm interested to see how Canada is going to be affected by the distribution in comparison to other territories throughout the world. That will be interesting to see. And guys, I'm just overall just very excited for the show.